And then, guys, we started a series last weekend called Kingdom and Country, and we're really taking some time just to look at some of the reality that the Bible presents to us. So that in essence, we're going to walk into a dual citizenship in life. And what do we mean by that is typically, many of us, if you grow up in a country and you become a citizen of that country, you belong to that geography, and that's real. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you also belong, you're a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. And so you end up having this dual citizenship, right? You belong to two different things. In that citizenship, the two belongings that we have are going to have some impact on each other. And it's kind of what we talked about the first week. We talked a little bit about how those work together. I got some new jumbo markers. Really excited about that, right? Yeah, a little nerd moment for you. There we go. Okay, so we said, you know, here in essence is the kingdom, and I belong to that first and most, but there's a reality that within that, I'm also a citizen of a country, right? And so I belong to a kingdom, I belong to a country, and those two citizenships are going to run into each other, right? And what we said last week, and I encourage you to catch up and catch the whole conversation. What we said last week is, if I'm a kingdom person, if I'm somebody that would look and say, I follow Jesus, I belong to him, I've received the forgiveness of my sins, and I want to follow him with my life, then I am a kingdom first person. That means no matter what country I'm going to find myself or what situation I'm going to find myself in life, the kingdom is going to be what defines and directs me as I think about how to approach whatever it is I'm in the middle of. Specifically for this conversation, it's going to be a country, right? So we said if we're followers of Jesus, we are kingdom first people, and that's going to color how I'm going to see the rest of my interaction with my country. Now, we said for this series, we know that you might come in here today and have all kinds of different feelings. You come in here from different vantage points. Some of us are like, I can't wait for the election season to be over. Like, can I just make it go away? Some of you, if you're there, go woohoo. Okay, some of you are there, right? Some of you are like, man, I'm on like the edge of my seat watching this thing. I'm kind of obsessed. I'm dialed in. I lose sleep at night. I fall asleep to talk radio. If you're on that side of this thing, say woohoo. You just don't admit it, right? You're not telling the truth. I know there's some of you, right? But we all say there's some realities that there's frustration, there's difficulty, right? And we come into it, of course, with a ton of emotion. Some of that's what we're going to talk about today. But here's kind of my guarantee to you. In this series, we're not going to tell you how to vote. Okay, we're not going to tell you how to vote. That's not the point of it. My goal is not to try to steer you spiritually. To steer you politically. It's to lead you spiritually. Say that again. Right? My goal is not to steer you politically. It's to lead you spiritually. And so that's the emphasis of this series is how do I spiritually approach this conversation in my role in certainly in an election season, but even more than that, my role in a country. So I don't think this conversation will maybe change how you're going to vote. It may change how you approach voting, if that makes sense, right? So I want to come to the voting process differently because I want to be spiritually prepared for it. So with that being said, let's dive into it a little bit. And we're going to look at the person of Jesus a little bit today. And we want to look at how Jesus interacted politically, right? If you can think about how this plays out, the most influential person that has ever lived on planet Earth, how did he interact politically, right? It's an important question. And so I want to take just a quick look at how he shows up in a particular situation where somebody's trying to trap him. Often as Jesus entered near the end of his life, he would find himself in these situations where he was being trapped and people were trying to catch him, either religiously or politically, into situations where it would be really hard to give an answer on either side of the question. And he's in one of those. And often these situations would be super tricky, and Jesus finds his way through them. Here's what Matthew 22 says, starting in verse 15. It says, then the Pharisees went out, and they laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Teacher, they said, we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Let me just pause here for a minute. We'll look at the rest of the passage. So the Pharisees are going to be people who are religious leaders of the time. They would have viewed things through a specific political lens. Okay, so they would have been resistant to authority, resistant to political authority. So they would have seen Rome's influence as Rome kind of took over Israel and drew all that land. And the Pharisees would have looked and said, we're going to resist this. I don't want to pay the taxes. I don't want this. I resent this leadership. And we're going to do all that we can to kind of fight against it. On the other side of the equation would be the Herodians. And the Herodians are like, hey, kind of is what it is. Might as well just roll with it. And so they kind of floated with it. They paid the taxes. They kind of went along with things. Typically, these guys are on the opposite side of equations. But here in this situation, they're trying to trap Jesus together. It kind of unifies them in this scenario. And they come with flattery. We know that you're a man of integrity, that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. They go on and they say, you aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what's your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? So they set the trap. Jesus, at face value, can't really land on either side of this equation, right? He lands on either side of this equation. He's going to be in trouble. It's going to sound like he's for the Romans if he says to pay it. If he says not to pay it, it sounds like he's in rebellion against the Romans, right? So he's in this quandary, and Jesus, in the masterful way that only he does, he finds himself with an incredible answer. Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, you hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax. They brought him a denarius, that'd be a coin of the day. And he asked them, whose image is this and whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. Then he said to them, so give back to Caesar what's Caesar's and to God what is God's. When they heard this, they were amazed, and so they left him and they went away. They looked and said, didn't see that one coming. Jesus blows their mind. They try to trap him over and over again. And here's in essence, right, what's going on. Jesus is going to look and say, hey, show me that coin that's in your hand, right? And he's going to look and say, whose inscription's on there, right? Whose face is printed on that coin? And they're like, Caesar's. He's like, good. You give what's due to Caesar. Take what's due to him. That's right. It's good. You owe that. And give back to the country, the empire, to Caesar what is Caesar's. But then he adds something that's super important and very relevant for us. He's going to look and say, whose image is on you? Whose image is on you? The image of God is on every human being, right? So he's going to say, hey, whose image is on the coin? Caesar's. Whose image is on you? The kingdom, right? I am made in the image of God. So he's going to look and say, you give to God what is God's. You give to Caesar what is Caesar's, right? And he sets this paradigm and says, sure, you should pay your taxes. You should do what's right. And he opens up this bigger conversation about the reality of what is due God and his kingdom, offering ourselves first and most to that. And what we can do here is we can grab some really helpful principles simply from Jesus' brilliant answer. There's a reality that, right, as a kingdom first person, I'm going to look at my role in the country, and there are some things that are due to Caesar, so to say. And in my country, as a follower of Jesus, I'm going to look and say, what might that look like? And there's a reality that I probably should, at some level, engage what it means to bring the heart and the mind and the good of the country to bear as far as I have power to do so. Right? So I should probably be engaged at some level. I probably shouldn't just put my head in the sand and try to ignore it and hope really hard that it'll go away, although some of us are like, I kind of wish I could just do that. Right? I'm not sure that we can land 100% there. I should at least know what's going on a little bit and try to be engaged in the vehicles that are available to me, consciously making decisions to bring the kingdom, the heart of Jesus, to bear in some way in the country that I live. I might look and say, I'm going to honor the leaders that God has put in the country. Did you know in Romans chapter 13 that it says there are no leaders that are put into authority unless they're placed there by God? I'm just going to let that sink in for a minute. Just take a minute and think about that while I drink some of this water. Think about that for just a second. While humanly, we might look at a leadership role and say, how did that happen? Or why did that person? Or how did we get here? And God would say, hey, you're a follower of me. Right? I am the big L leader up here. And I have purposes that are playing out that are beyond what you can see or understand. So I want you to trust me that when there's leaders here, your part to do is to actually honor them, to pray for them, to recognize that I put them there. And even if you have a hard time honoring the person, you honor the seat that they sit in and the fact that God set them in it. Right? I want to do good in the country, in the place that I find myself. I want to, like we talked about last week, submit to leadership as often as I can. Careful, but there is a time to defy leadership. We won't talk at length today about that. Here's what that is not. For some of you who are like, ooh, he's finally talking about something I want to hear about. Right? Defying leadership is not about, hey, they're asking me to do something I don't want to do, so I'm going to defy that. Leadership is defied in Scripture only when I can't obey the king in the country that I'm in. When I'm being asked to not worship Jesus or worship someone other than Jesus, then I have to not submit, I have to defy. Most of the time, I'm going to land in a place where I'm going to be submitting to the leaders of the country and following the situation that's there, bringing my best, trying to honor and engage, whether that's voting or whatever I can bring. I'm going to give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Now, on the other side of this equation, I want to give to God what is God's. And this is the bigger portion. This is the more important piece of the equation. That we would look and say, what do I give back to the kingdom? And here's the big answer, is me. Is me. What I'm going to offer to the kingdom, to God's leadership, to his rule and his reign, is me. I'm going to bring my passion here. I'm going to bring my allegiance here. I'm going to bring my fears, my worries, my dreams here. I'm going to bring my trust here. The kingdom is going to get me. Why? I'm made in the image of God. And what I owe, so to say, what I owe back to God is a thank you, as an act of worship, is me. Let me show you the part where we tend to get in trouble. The people of God have always struggled with this. When the people of God find themselves in a situation where their security is threatened, when it's difficult to be provided for, when something's gone wrong and they're at risk, it becomes tempting. It becomes tempting for the people of God to take what is due the kingdom and to begin to offer it or to seek it from a country. The Israelites, when they were in the desert and wandering with Moses, would say, man, it really was good back there in Egypt, Moses. I know we're free and all now, but we had food to eat. Shouldn't we go back and find the solutions here? When the people of Israel looked around and everybody else had a king and they didn't, they said, can't we go find it? Can't we find our own king? And they would run back to the country, back to the power source to find another way to get my problem solved. And the people of God have always run into the temptation to go to something that we can see and understand and point to and say, that thing, that can solve my problems. That will feed me. That will make me safe. That will save me. And whenever the people of God have run that way, there's a form of trouble that they've bumped into. Because what God is always trying to do is he's trying to teach his people to trust him, to lean into his leadership, into his kingdom. And he's saying, hey, don't bring your fears and your angers and your worries there. But bring them to me. I can handle it. I know what you're wrestling with. I know you're afraid. Paul would say this, 2 Timothy 1. He says, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, of love, and self-control. Folks, you need to hear this today. The people of God are not driven by fear. And you and I have a set of fears that we're struggling with right now. What about the economy? What about the direction? What about our democracy? What about our freedoms? What about? Guys, those questions are real. It's not that they're not real. It's not that they're invalid. Here's the reality, though, that we don't look at those fears and those angers, those frustrations. Somebody stopped me afterwards, and then they said, Ryan, make sure you use the word anger, because I'm so frustrated at the situation that we're in. I'm angry that this is the spot our country is in. I said, I get it. What I want to do, though, as a person of faith, is I want to take that anger upward. I want to take that to a king who is in charge. There's a king who reigns today, right? This is why this matters so much. What I want to do is I want to take the panic and the mob mentality that is brewing in the conversation right now all that emotion and getting amped up, and I'm losing sleep at night, and I want to suck that out of the conversation for a minute. Right? Suck it out of the room. And now let's just deal with what is. Let's take a deep breath. I feel like a football coach at halftime right now. Right? Hey, let's look at me. Okay? We're playing this game right now. Here you are. Settle down a little bit. We need some of that. Settle down. Stop. Stop panicking. You're a child of God. You have a king that is on a throne. I know it's scary. What you do with scary matters. If you take scary and pass it on and multiply it and get a bunch of other people all fired up and scared, or are you determined you're going to take scary into your own hands and we're going to make, careful, don't delete the king from the process. Don't delete the leader that can actually help you, the good shepherd that leads you beside quiet waters. Don't delete him from the process, because it might be that the whole point of this thing is for me and you and the people around us to learn to trust in a kingdom that we can't see. Is it possible that the goal is not just America turning out the way that we hope it would? Is it possible there's a bigger thing happening? And listen, guys, I want good to happen here, and I want to do everything I can to bring good here. Hear me. I've got kids, and I want to have grandkids, and I want to have a safe, all that. And first and most here, we don't have a spirit of fear. If fear is leading the charge, I got to push pause and say, wait a minute. Let's look at it again. Let's come back and look at the situation with fresh eyes. It might not even change the decision I make, but it changes how I make the decision. So I would encourage anybody in the middle of making a big decision, don't let hysteria or fear or mob mentality drive you, period. Why? It's not what the people of God do. Power, love, self-control. Okay, we're in it. Simple passage that continues just to blow my mind. Can't believe that Jesus says this stuff sometimes. Here's what he says in Matthew 6. Just listen to it. I'll just read it to you. Therefore, I tell you, don't worry. Do not worry about your life. Do not worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink, or about your body, what you'll wear. He says, is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? He says, look at the birds of the air. They don't sow, or reap, or store away in barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they are? Listen to this question. Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? That is convicting. That hits in the heart for me. My thoughts and my spinning and my wondering, and what's it accomplish? Whole lot of nothing. Why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They don't labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. And that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire. will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? It says, for the pagans run after these things. People that don't know me are obsessed with this stuff. Your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Here's what he says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Guys, this is the conversation, right? This is where we are. Next week, we'll have a real, honest conversation around some of the issues that show up that we're looking at in this election. We're going to take some time to do that. The week after, we're going to have the most important conversation of this series. I want you to be there in 2 weeks. But we got to land today. And here's the reality. How I approach all this as a person of faith is enormously important. The why that drives my engagement is enormously important. Here's the reality. I know some of us guys, we're here and we're frustrated. We're scared. We don't know where all this is going to go. The Lord he'd never find anger towards somebody who is honest in their emotion. What he invites is for us to bring that to him. He's going to look and say, guys, what I want you to do right now, not after the election's done, not after your next milestone, is he would look and say, I want you to seek the kingdom now. Seek righteousness in your life, in your situation right now. What can I do? I'm just one person. It's going to take all you have just to seek the kingdom in your own life. That's true for me. I can't solve all those problems. All I can do is look and say, God, what have you entrusted me with? My little tiny pocket here in this little tiny section of this country, in this massive kingdom, what does it mean for me to seek the kingdom here and now in the situation that I've been in? Not fix the country, not control the culture. Seek a kingdom. Do you know that? And we're not called to control a culture. We're called to seek a kingdom. Did you know that? Jesus never said, hey, get in power and stay in power and do whatever you can to get power. What he did say is he said, you seek my righteousness. You do right. Do right by your neighbor today. You seek after my ways today. You do the thing that you know you need to do to be right with me today. And if we were honest, all the noise out here is largely a massive distraction from me simply doing the things that I know God is asking me to do. To give Caesar what is Caesar's, and to give God what is God's. Sometimes people say, man, where'd all the Abe Lincolns go? What about the days when so-and-so was in charge? As I laugh and smile and kind of think, yeah, it's some good questions. Here's what I know. I'm not alive in the Abe Lincoln days. I'm alive today. So are you. And hear me, the people of God are on display. The way that we love, the way that we think, the way that we compose ourselves, if we get wrapped into mob mentality, or all that matters tremendously. I can't live in Abe's day. I can live in this day. So can you. And my argument to you and to me is that's going to take all I have, all my heart, passion, and energy to show up here, to show up in the ways I need to show up here, to seek the kingdom in my day, in my time, in the ways that God has called and asked me to. Right? We can explore the rest later, but I got to get this part right. I'm not going to let fear drive the train. I'm not going to let panic or paranoia or mob mentality drive my thinking. What I'm asking you to do is, if you're a follower of Jesus today, is to resolve in your heart to not lose self-control. Keep your head on straight. Resist that. That stuff is always there, and it never produces good results. The people of God are not given to a spirit of fear, but love. As the band comes out, I want to just give a little bit of time, a little bit of space for us just to be honest with God. If your life's anything like me, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of stuff to do, and it goes really fast. What if we just took a little bit of space and time and were able to bring our real fears and our real frustrations and even our anger and say, Lord, here's where I am. Will you be my God? Will you help me? This is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm wrestling with. Will you shepherd me right here, right now? Band comes out. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Spend a little time seeking the Lord here together. Would you pray with me? Father, I just want to confess today that I don't know the future. I don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 10 years. None of us do, Lord. But one thing we do know is that you will continue to be on your throne. You will be faithful and true and trustworthy. You'll be able to handle our biggest fears, our most crushing anxieties, our seething anger. You can receive all that. And you can lead us. And you can mold us. And you can show us how righteousness shows up in our lives. God, you see us squirming down here. Would you help us? Meet us in the middle of all of it. Be our peace and our God right here.